Why are we here today?
We're here already the 50-something day, over 50 days. 24 hours a day, there's people here. It's a sit-in, so to speak. And it started with two demands actually. First is for the Russians to leave Armenia. But in order for the Russians to leave Armenia, and there's an explanation why we want that, the war and the continuation, the genocide, the perpetration of the genocide was a cooperation between Turkey and Russia. It was planned by them, implemented by Azerbaijan with full knowledge of Nikol Pashinyan. Full knowledge and direct and indirect participation. And so that's why the first demand is for the Russians to leave. And the second is, of course, in order for that to happen, we need to do the first thing, which is to have Nikol Pashinyan leave. Because Nikol Pashinyan is Kremlin's stooge, Kremlin's puppet, collaborative government of Nikol Pashinyan does everything that Russia and Turkey ask him to do. So
Nikol Pashinyan made him many promises when he was campaigning.
Right.
And
kept none. Kept none. Not a single promise he has kept. So in order for us to be liberated from the Russian occupation, we need to first of all liberate ourselves from Nikol Pashinyan, because he is the one who's holding the Russians here. He goes to Europe, to Brussels, says that he's moving closer to the West. Then he comes back to Armenia and says we're not leaving anything. We are where we are. He just made another announcement today that there will be no change of foreign policy. We're still in the CSTO. We're still in that post-Soviet republics, and Putin verified it today in his speech, saying that Armenia is not going anywhere. They are with us. So we are with Russia because of Nikol Pashinyan. Armenia votes at the UN every single time with Russia. Never voted against Russia as being an aggressor or a genocidal country or a criminal. You know, for example, when they decided that Putin is a criminal, Armenia is not verifying that or is not accepting that fact. And Nikol Pashinyan continues to be friends and on good terms with Putin, calling him on his birthday and congratulating him and things like that. So this is the story. First step, in order for us to get rid of the Russians, we need first of all to get rid of Nikol Pashinyan, because he is the obstacle, or he is the guardian of the Russian occupation in Armenia.
The National Democratic Alliance, what should citizens know about them?
Well, in order for citizens to have a better understanding about the National Democratic Alliance, I have to say that right now in Armenia there are three groups of political groupings. One is the obvious ex-presidents and ex-political parties, the Republican Party, the other parties, who we call the fifth column, being that they are obviously pro-Russian. They were organizing sit-ins and demonstrations about a few weeks ago, and their demand was only the resignation of Nikol Pashinyan. They weren't saying a word about Russia because they are the obvious pro-Russian group. These are people who were the followers of Kocharyan and Serge Sarkisyan. The second grouping of, so to speak, political group was what we call the pseudo-Europeans or pseudo-Westerners. They claim that they rightfully claim that Russia is the one that's responsible for the war in 2020, is responsible for the ethnic cleansing of the Armenians from Artsakh, and they want the Russians out, but they don't want Nikol Pashinyan out. Now, that's why we call them pseudo Western oriented, because they know very well that you cannot get the Russians out unless you get Nikol out first. They know this very well, but they try to fool the people by portraying themselves as Western oriented. In reality, they are just helping Nikol Pashinyan to stay in power as long as possible. And they know that his days are numbered. They just want to, at this point, keep him in power as much as they can. So now, if we draw this triangle, so you have the pro-Russian, obvious pro-Russian group, you have the so-called pro-Western group, but who want Nikol Pashinyan in, and the other side of the triangle is the National Democratic Alliance, which wants, as I just explained, that if you want the Russians out, first you have to get rid of Nikol Pashinyan. In other words, their guardian angel is Nikol Pashinyan, the Russians are. So first you need to get rid of them, and then you can get the Russians out. And of course, in the middle of all this is Nikol Pashinyan, the middle of the triangle. And he tries to play one group against the other. He tries to have those pseudo-Europeans or pseudo-Western-oriented ones to push them. So you have a lot of, they get all the coverage by those two groups, they get all the coverage by TV and the news. Meanwhile, NADA gets no coverage. And as I mentioned, we've been here 50 days, over 50 days, and not one single local news reporter has visited us and try to take an interview or talk even as to what's happening. Even the so-called US-funded Radio Free Europe or Liberty Radio hasn't done that. In the 50 years, they just did one report which involved the police brutality, which happened last week, unprecedented, uncalled for police brutality against peaceful demonstrators, where they're in broad daylight knocked people to the ground. Then the Red Berets, so to speak, the special forces, surrounded that person so nobody could see what was happening, and they were kicking the person on the ground. And there was no reason whatsoever. It was an outright provocation by them. And this was a way for Nikol's regime to scare people from participating in the rallies and the marches that we have now on a weekly basis. As you know, today was a rally and a march, and of course the daily sit-ins. Meanwhile, during this, since the ethnic cleansing of the Armenians in Artsakh, we have turned this sit-in also as a collection point for help for our compatriots from Artsakh who are left without home and clothing. So we have people donate money, donate food, clothing, kitchen appliances, even that far. I know somebody brought in a vacuum cleaner and some of the kitchen appliances to help those people. Clothing, of course, is the most abundant that we have. We actually have more clothing that we can hand out to. Of course, funds help, because with funds we help them out in also we have a list of people who are offering apartments for Artsakh, our compatriots from Artsakh, offering their apartments on a temporary basis, 5 months, 6 months, free. And we have a list of that, so Artsaksis, they come and they look at the list, see if they want to go. Not every apartment is in Yerevan, some are outskirts. So.
What is there a plan for removing or changing the government?
Well, the plan is this. There are two ways that you can have a regime leader or an autocrat such as Nikol Pashinyan be removed. One is if there is enough people power which fills the streets of Yerevan, where under pressure he has no choice. And of course, the second way of his removal is what we would call the geopolitical changes that occur throughout the world that would force him to leave because he has no more support. Now, he has the support of Russia. He has Putin's direct support. Putin has said it a number of times outright that he supports Nikol Pashinyan's government. And of course, he peppers it by saying, well, he was popularly elected. Meanwhile, the polls that occurred before the ethnic cleansing from Artsakh have shown, one poll has shown that his popularity is at 13%, another poll showed his popularity at 6%. So if there were elections today, he would definitely not be elected. And as you know, in Armenia, the elections are not for a prime minister. They are for the parliament, and the parliament elects the prime minister. So it's not direct vote by the people. So in a way, when Nikol Pashinyan or Putin says that he is legitimately elected, it's not really true, because 600,000 people voted for him, which is less than 30% of eligible voters. So with 30% of eligible voters, he represents 100% of the people. So the 70% who didn't vote for him are being subjugated by him with this anti-democratic, brutal police brutality. Forced people are being forced to support him because they depend on him for their jobs. About 20% of the population, employed population, one way or the other, works for the government. So they all depend, and their families depend on him. They would lose their job if they spoke against him. But as I said, the polls speak the truth, and this is before the ethnic cleansing. If there was another poll taken now, I'm sure there'll be less than 2% his popularity. So one way is, as I said, is if the people fill the streets of Yerevan and voice their discontent with him, and he'll be forced to leave. And of course, the other way is the world powers, be they as Russians or Western, will tell him it's time for him to leave. And we know that none of the world powers are happy with him, because he lied to everyone. He goes to Moscow and says, I'm with you, I love you, Putin, you're my best friend. And then he goes to Brussels and says, well, I'm Western oriented, Armenia are Westerners, we don't want to be with the Russians, it's just that we have no choice. So he's playing on both fields, so to speak. And at this point, everyone is fed up with him because he lied to every single one of them. He lied to Biden and he lied to Putin. So he has no support from either one. He is hanging from a string, and the political turmoil or this whole thing with Israel and with Artsakh, during this turmoil, people are kind of lost because they don't know what's happening. They don't know what to do. They're afraid if they, so to speak, if they shake, the boat, that things might get worse. For those people who feel that way, we say, look, with Russia, it's a slow death, little by little. It's a death with 1,000 cuts, as they say. You know that, and everybody knows that, because we have seen, at least since 2020, since the war, we have seen how Russia has little by little taken our land and given it to Azeris. They come, they tell our guys to move out. Our guys believe that the Russians are their allies, so they believe him. They move out of the certain military post. The following day, Azeris walk in. They walk in, they don't even fight for it. They just walk in. And the latest thing, again, was a Russian orchestrated surrender. Russia said to Artsakh defense forces, surrender, put down the arms. So they put down the arms, and 120,000 people were forced out of Artsakh. So they know this is slow death with Russia. So the choice is, and this is what we tell our people, do you want to die slowly, or do you want to have a chance to live? Because on the other side is a chance to live. Here's the example. Somebody brought this example. On one hand, the boat is sinking, the Titanic is sinking. Now you have a lifesaver 100 feet away. Do you jump into the water and swim to the lifesaver, or do you stay on the Titanic and sink with it? So we know Russia is a Titanic. We know it's sinking. We know that they're not our allies, and we're gonna go down with them sooner or later. So aren't you better off to jump into the water and swim that 100 feet and get reach the lifesaver, and possibly your chances of survival are at least 50-50. Here, you're definitely not going to survive with the Russians. This is how I like to leave that as the last word.